Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. As you know, I recently was at FanExpo Philly, and whenever I do these cons and things with my books, I have the opportunity to do a vampire panel. I know you guys have heard me talk about it. You've probably seen it on my Instagram or me talk about it on YouTube, but while I was at FanExpo Philly, Tony from Hack the Movies and I shared a table, and he was nice enough to record my panel so that all of you can see it, because it occurred to me, if you can't make it to a Comic-Con, if you're not near where I happen to be, or even if I now rewrite the panel and do something completely different, that you might not have the opportunity to see me speak. And this way you can now hear my panel and be a part of what we get to do, what I get to do, and the people who show up to the panel, what we get to do at these Comic-Cons, at these events. So I hope you enjoy it. Let me know down below if you have any questions, because at the end of my panel, people get to ask questions. So you let me know if you have any questions for me, what you thought of the panel, and if you'd like to see more of these sort of little extra bonus episodes. All right, wicked hugs and bloody kisses. Enjoy the panel.
We're going to start easy. They're not all going to be this easy, so don't get excited, okay? What is the last name of the vampire family in Twilight? Go ahead. Go ahead. Which one of the Cullens has the power of seeing into the future? Alice. Name the 4 main vampires in the TV show What We Do in the Shadows. In the back. Colin what?
Robbins.
Correct. Nandor the Relentless. One of the best jokes on that show is when he got interviewed and it said Nandor de Laurentiis. Guillermo is a descendant of which famous vampire figure? Right there. Good job. What's the name of the town in the Vampire Diaries? Over there. Oh, you don't know?
Wow.
Everyone shame him. Right there. Yeah, Jill.
I could be mistaking it with someone else's Mystic Falls.
You got it. That would have been so embarrassing if you said it wrong. What is the name of Elena's doppelganger? You already have a bag. In the back corner, red. What is it?
Catherine?
Catherine, you're right. Again, you looked uncertain, so that was bold to raise your hand. All right. What is the name of the female and the child vampire that traveled with David's gang in The Lost Boys?
Star and Laddie.
Good job, Laddie. This is a tough one. You ready? What was the name of the dog in Lost Boys? Go ahead. Nanook. I would also accept good boy. What is the name, the full name, of the vampire who's telling his story in Interview with the Vampire? You're so close. It was on the tip of your...
Now you made me forget. Louis, the lock. Almost.
I'm going to give it to you. It's okay. Louis de Pontolat.
Yes.
Extra points if you say it with a French accent. Name the secret society that watches, studies, but does not interfere with the supernatural in the Anne Rice universe. Go ahead. Talamasca. Good job. All right, so a couple easy ones for you. What is the title for the person in charge of training the Slayer in Buffy the Vampire Slayer? The Watcher. Good job. Sunnydale is built over a... Right there.
Hellmouth.
Good job. All right, it's gonna get tough, okay? No pressure, but if you answer these, I will be very impressed with you. Okay? In the novel, Dracula, what is the name of the wolf that he sets free from the zoo? Yeah. He has a name. Dracula visits him and then sets him free. If anyone knew this, you're a literature major. Yeah, it's Berserker. Yes. What is the name of the vampire couple in Only Lovers Left Alive? Go.
Adam and Eve.
Good job. How about the writer? Did not connect it until it was already out. I'm like, Adam and Eve. Name any one of the vampire clans from Vampire the Masquerade. Green hair.
Toreador?
That works. That's what I was. I was Toreador. Good job. Who here does not know Vampire the Masquerade? Check it out. What is the name of the police squad that Anita Blake works for in the Anita Blake series? You're so close. You got it. Rip it. Yeah, I'll take it. Go ahead. So that is the Regional Preternatural Investigation Task Force. Good job, everybody. All right, so we're going to start this panel by saying that this is a safe space, okay? We're going to have fun, raise our hands, be nice to each other, not judge each other, because this is a safe space. So that being said, who enjoyed the movie Twilight? Get out. I'm telling you right now, it's sheer jealousy that her universe is worth $1 billion and my books are still sitting on a table. All right, welcome to the Anatomy of a Vampire. Before we get started, I'm going to answer your immediate questions. Yes, I am actually a doctor. A doctor is not something I made up. What's up?
Do vampires have glitter?
God, I hope not. If after 44 years of wishing I could meet a vampire, it shows up in glitters. Yes, I am actually a doctor. No, I am not a medical doctor. So my doctorate is in nursing practice. I have been a nurse for 14 years, giving patient care. That is real. And before you make the joke, yes, you can be a doctor-nurse. You hear it all the time. It's a stupid joke. But what does a nursing doctorate have to do with vampires? Nothing. Nothing. But shockingly enough, being a vampire expert, it doesn't pay well, and I like health insurance. So, being up here talking to you guys is a ton of fun, but it doesn't pay anything, so I do still have to work as a nurse. I will tell you, my love of vampires started when I saw Bela Lugosi play Dracula when I was 6 years old. And I know what you're thinking. That's very young to be watching horror, but don't worry, I am fine. Yes. So I grew up in the 80s. A lot of questionable things happened, okay? Parents were very different. But letting me watch horror at 6 was not the mistake my parents made. It was allowing me to get a perm. Entering as a freshman in high school thinking that was going to make me cool. But that being said, if you don't have a tragic backstory of geekdom, you probably don't turn out very cool, right? I feel like it's a necessary evil. My love of vampires continued all the way through middle school, high school, into college, and has led to me writing four, I'm working on the 5th one, 4 vampire novels, as well as having a vampire podcast and YouTube channel. So I wish I could go back and tell permed teenage Lena, it's going to turn out okay. You're going to be fine. But people come to me all the time and they say, can there really be enough vampire material for a full podcast, a YouTube channel, writing, coming to cons? The answer is hell yeah. Now that being said, we only get 45 minutes, okay? And we don't want to run over because that's rude. So just know that I cannot talk about everything ever created that ever has to do with vampires. So please don't come at me if I don't talk about the one thing you hope I'm going to talk about, okay? If you really want to talk to me about vampires, you can follow me on Instagram. I answer all of my DMs, all that, okay? So be cool, please. Now, long before people were writing vampire romance novels, there was ancient societies who were warning each other about these things that would come out of the ground or had never been human that were going to come out and they were going to steal your blood or your life essence. The Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, the Greeks, the Turks, many other pre-Christian populations had these tales of these creatures who wanted to sneak into your home and steal your life force. Almost every culture has a version of a vampire. So going way, way back into ancient Greece and Rome, we had the succubi and the incubi. These would come into your home, they would seduce you, they would drain you of your vital fluids during intercourse. It actually became so believed in that culture that the church would eventually tell their congregations to watch out for these demons, that they were sent by Satan to make you sin and damn you to hell. And what it was husbands who cheated on their wives said, it wasn't my fault. These succubi made me do it. Now we go to China. Does anyone know what the American translation is for Jiangxi?
Isn't it hopping?
Hopping vampire. Yep, you're exactly right. The hopping vampire. And the reason they're called this is because they believed that the rigor mortis is kicked in before they climbed out of the coffin. And because their joints weren't working, their knees couldn't bend, so they would sort of hop towards you, which I think is horrifying. But it's okay, because if you hold up a mirror or a flame, it can scare them away, right? Pretty easy, you just have to carry around a lighter. But sometimes it wasn't so easy. So in the Philippines, you have the Mandarugu or the Manananggal. The Mandarugu is a beautiful girl by day, but at night she grows wings, a long proboscis tongue, and she searches for human entrails, the mucus of the sick, and the fetuses of pregnant women. Yeah. The Manananggal is a beautiful old woman who can detach her winged upper body to feed on unborn children or the blood of pregnant women. But it's okay, because if you find her lower half and sprinkle garlic or salt on the lower half, then she can't return to detach and she'll die, or to attach and she'll die. It's a little complex, but at least you had some options, right? The other one they believed was if you stuck thorns around your window, that her entrails that were sticking out of her upper half would get stuck on the thorns and then she'd be trapped until daylight. In Spain, they have the guaxa or the guajana. The two I just told you about. So the guaxa is an old vampire who sticks his single tooth, as you can see. Guaxa has just one long little tooth right in the middle. Sticks it into you and sucks the blood of his victims. Or the guajana is a vampiric witch wearing a black cloak to cover her gnarled body, who will sneak into homes at night and drink the blood of children. And you'll see a lot of cultures, witches and vampires are very much overlap. There's a lot of vampiric witch beings. In Africa, the Batsilio people of Madagascar have the Ramanga. This is a living vampire, so born vampire, who not only drinks blood, but eats the toenail clippings of royalty. Different. This is another vampire witch. So this is the Striga. This is a very famous one. This is in Albania. And the folklore is that this vampiric witch will suck the blood of infants at night while they sleep, and then turns into a flying insect, like a moth or a fly, and that's how she gets in and out. Often she's pictured as a woman with a hateful stare who sometimes wears a cape, a horribly disfigured face. Now, only the Striga can cure somebody that she has fed on. However, there is a caveat. It's a little bit complicated though. If the Striga leaves your home, vomits up the blood she's just drank, and then you find it and you dip a silver coin in it, wrap a cloth around it, that's a charm that will now keep you protected. It's a process. Now, I could spend all day talking to you about the different vampires in different cultures. I don't have that much time, but I do want to hit on one of my favorites, and that is Celtic folklore, so Scotland, Ireland. This is the Bivansee. The Bivansee are beautiful women found primarily in the Scottish Highlands. A lot of times they sound almost fairy-like. So they're beautiful women who come out of the woods and lure travelers into the woods at night. Now, anyone who's attracted to females, I'm going to tell you, if a beautiful woman walks out of the woods and gives a little this, it's not your lucky night. Don't follow her. Trust me. It is not worth it. But the thing that you need to know is that vampires are so real to people in these cultures that they had a lot of rituals and ways to prevent vampire attacks or ways to kill vampires or cure those that are already infected. So, by raising of hands, can you guys give me some ways to protect yourself from a vampire attack? Go ahead. Garlic. What'd you say? Jill. Holy water. Behind her?
Running water?
That's a good one. Yeah, a lot of times they believed you couldn't cross running water. That's an old one.
Don't invite strangers into your house.
Don't invite strangers into your house. That's a good one. Sinners taught a lot of people. Go ahead.
Iron and silver.
Yes?
Crucifix.
Crucifix.
Can't you throw like a bag of rice down and take out?
That's another good, that's an old one. So for those of you that didn't know, they used to believe if you threw down rice or seeds, the vampire had to stop and count them. And actually they just used that joke in What We Do in the Shadows. But for those of you that don't know, that is where the count from Sesame Street came from. That old legend. Uh-huh.
Tangled up rope.
Oh yeah, that's another one they have to untangle. A lot of OCD with vampires. I'm not sure. Uh-huh. That would kill them. We're talking about preventing, keeping them away. Don't let them get that close. A sickle. Oh, you jumped ahead. That's part of my lecture. Don't listen to that.
A Mentai talisman.
Yeah, so you guys are really coming up with some obscure ones. Yeah. So another one that people don't know about, you guys said most of them, but one, this is really big over in like Romania and Transylvania and things like that, is sewing blackthorn into the clothes of your pocket. Yeah, so what happens if it's too late and the vampire got to you, right? So then we need something different. So these are pictures from the Vampa Museum in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, not far from you guys here. Yeah, the Vampire Museum is called Vampa. But you can walk through and see these kits that people had in their houses. There's kits, there's trunks. This is one right here if you guys want to come see it when we're done. But it's a way to stop a vampire. So the vampire's already been turned, it's too late. So stake to the heart, cutting off their head, nailing them down into the coffin, putting the holy medallion on the coffin so they can't get out. But what's so interesting that I learned when I was over there was, you know, let's say that you don't have like a nice little handy kit like this, because this is for rich people, right? So, do you know what they had to do? DIY. That's not a bad idea, but they didn't really have anything back then. Like, they didn't have clothes, let alone wood. So, these are trunks, and these trunks are like the size of this table. And you would go to your local tavern, where this trunk would be, like a first aid kit, and you would go get a steak, go kill your vampire, and then come back and like have a beer. So it was like a village thing that you had these on hand to help the villages that had trouble with vampires and didn't have supplies. Very cool. So you guys will have to go check it out. So the other thing too, like your best kit is going to have a steak, a crucifix, a Bible, holy water, maybe some seeds, maybe an axe. But here's the thing, and this one, if you guys don't know, if you didn't see my table, is from 1870. So it's 150 years old, which is crazy because if you think about it, we're not talking about that long ago. That's like 3 generations ago. They had vampire hunting kits on hand. The other thing too is they had special ways to bury their dead. So in 2006, in the Italian village or city of Venice, archaeologists uncovered a 16th century corpse that may have belonged to either a vampire, a witch, or both. And what they did was they cut her head off, they shoved a brick into her mouth, so that if somehow she was able to get out of the coffin and just her head come after people, the stone would stop her from being able to bite. A lot of times, they believed, vampiric activity was more like the plague, but either way, a brick to the mouth is going to stop you from spreading whatever you have, right? In 2013, workers who were building a road in Poland discovered 4 skeletons. All 4 had their heads cut off, and it was found down between their legs, and this was believed to be a practice for those that you thought would be vampires that would rise. And around this time, another grave site was discovered in Bulgaria, and in this case, there was iron stakes through the rib cage, and that was because they would pin you down into the bottom of the coffin so you couldn't climb back out. Last year, and this is where you jumped ahead, it's okay. Last year, did you see this news article? Yeah, this was wild when this happened. So they put the sickle over the lady's throat when they buried her, so that if she came back and tried to sit up, she'd chop her own head off. Wow. That's very elaborate. But the interesting thing is, and they also would do like padlocks around the toes, which I don't totally understand, but the interesting thing is, these different grave sites that were found, because they can test the cloth and the food and things like that, they know that these are both peasants and rich people. Like, this was across, it didn't matter, nobody was safe. And I think that's so interesting. And even here in the United States, you'll see these vampire graves. Now, the rich people would say that's because we don't want people stealing from our dead ones. But I think it's because they were too embarrassed to admit that they were still very superstitious, even in the United States, even with wealth, even in the 1800s. Now, there is actual historical documentation of these are two very famous ones. There's so many, and you guys can obviously look this up online, but these are the two most famous. Jure Grando has the unique distinction that he was the first man in history to ever be officially labeled as a vampire on government paperwork. His case is the first fully documented case of vampirism in world history. Now, he lived in an Istrian village called Grando in the 17th century. He was an ordinary man, but when he died in 1656, he suddenly went from your average Joe to something supernatural. Because according to several villagers, Grando was seen walking through Kringa, his town, after death. Some even claimed that he would be knocking on doors at night. And before long, Kringa natives were calling Grando a strigan, which is an Italian word for like wizard, vampire, witch. Supposedly, he lived off the blood of children during their lifetimes so that when they died, they would come back as these evil creatures. For 16 years, the town was plagued with their vampire. Finally, 9 men in total found the corpse fully intact when they dug him up, drove a stake through his heart, and they said that blood just poured out of him like he had been drinking it for the last 16 years. Finally, they had killed the strigan and the plague stopped. So they were officially on paperwork that this man was a vampire and we just stopped a vampire from killing our villagers. And there's another one, Peter Plogojevich. Do you know how many times I had to practice saying that? 1725 in Serbia. Now, if you know your history, there was a very big problem with vampires in Serbia at this time. It was considered like a big problem. But this peasant, Peter Plogojevich, died of unspecific causes. But 3 days later, the story is that he rose and knocked on his son's door and said, "Feed me." And the son was in such a state of shock that he fed him. The second night he returns and the son says, "I'm not going to do it. You need to go back to your grave." So suddenly, people start dying. And what happened was, for the first week, 10 villagers died of this unspecific cause of death. So they went to their local magistrate saying, "You have to do something, people are dying, we think it's this guy." So the magistrate didn't really know what to do, and he knew that this vampire panic was already kind of spreading. So he went into Austria, which was the closest big area, and said, "Please," he goes to an army officer, he says, "Please do something, help me, this is getting out of control." The officer came and exhumed Peter's grave and the graves of his suspected victims and found that all of the bodies had barely decayed, looked full of health and vitality. So the army officer decided to drive stakes into all their hearts, decapitated all their corpses, and then he went back to Belgrade and wrote an official report that concluded that Peter was a vampire. And this is just 2 stories, but obviously we don't have time to talk about all of them. But if you go and just look online, there's just report after report after report, all the way up until the 1900s here in the United States. Officially, this was a vampire case. So the question is, how do we go from this, where we're fearing and we're hunting vampires? Uh-oh, it froze. How do we go from that to that? What happened? Right? So, I want you to travel with me back to the 1460s, the good old days. America hadn't been stolen yet. Peasants were working till they dropped. Disease ran amok. Witches were being burned. And the Ottoman Empire was working its way from east to west. And it was pushing across, and it wanted to take over as much land as possible. And the Catholic Church said, "We cannot let this happen," because that would mean the spread of Islam. So it was Catholicism versus Islam. So the Catholic Church came together and they said, "We have to stop them." And they got a whole bunch of sort of these like village officials, right? The head honcho from each village. And they put together an order called the Order of the Dragon. And their job was to stop Islam from being spread into Christian areas. And protecting a very small area was Vlad the Impaler. Yep, Vlad Tepes, Vlad II, Vlad Dracula, whatever you want to call him, ruled over Wallachia. Very quickly, the stories of his brutality spread across Europe. What is the most famous story?
It was when like an army tried to come in and he impaled basically all of them for, they were like the advanced.
And then what did he do?
He dipped his blood in their
Sat down and ate dinner.
bread and
Yeah. That is the most famous story. And I'll tell you guys, you can listen to my podcast. I have a whole hour and a half on Vlad. But what it was there were German people living in the area that owed him taxes. And he came and said, give me my taxes. And they said, we're not going to give you taxes. So he killed one of them. So the other two went back to Germany, and the story blew up like this, right? So that is from a German book. And that is how those stories started to spread. That being said, the real history is extremely complex. I'm sure there's so much that's real and so much that's not real. I know one of the famous stories is that they sent some Turkish people into his court and they refused to take their turbans off, so he nailed their turbans to their head. And that is a true story. So, yeah. That being said, I think that he was just trying to get quick control over his lands. Doesn't matter, right? I'm not a Vlad defender, so I wasn't there. That being said, these stories and stories like this, who's this? Elizabeth Bathory. Also, Transylvanian born. And the story was what? Go ahead.
She would take young women, take their blood, and then bathe them.
To try and stay young. That was a story, right? Well, let me tell you, I have an episode about her as well. But she was a woman whose husband died. She had a ton of money, a ton of property. Well, we couldn't have a woman with a bunch of money and property being independent, right? So the king of the local, I don't remember what king it was. You've got to go listen to my episode. But he owed her family money. And so instead of just paying her, because it's embarrassing to pay a woman, right? He just said, well, I heard she's murdering a bunch of women, sent her cousin to come investigate, and guess who inherited all of her money when she went to jail? Her cousin. Interesting, right? So I don't think she was very good to her servant girls, but do I think she bathed in blood every night? Probably not. But stories like these are going to inspire stories, right? So the first one is one called Carmilla. Who knows Carmilla? Right. Sadly, this amazing story got lost. And why did it get lost? Because a couple months later, Dracula comes out, right? Now, when Dracula comes out, it was not beloved by all, right? Critics liked it. They thought it was okay. But people in Victorian society were extremely upset. And do you know why? Two things. One, there were 4 vampires in the story. I'm sorry, 5 vampires. 4 of them were women. So you have the 3 brides and Lucy. And these women were sexually independent. They went for what they wanted, and that terrified Victorian society. The idea that women could be sexually aggressive. The other one was there was a massive fear at that time over disease and foreigners coming into your territory. And this book tapped into both of those. The idea that foreigners will come in, start to take over your society, steal your women, whatever, and spread their disease. So it really freaked people out reading this book. That being said, it changed vampire lore forever. Because Carmilla and Dracula were the first times where vampire stories had sort of that sensuality underneath. And anyone who's read those 2 stories knows exactly what I'm talking about. So, since that time, last time I looked, in the Guinness Book of World Records, Dracula is the most portrayed fictional character of all time. Of all time. Now, the first film adaptation happened in 1921. It was a silent film in Hungary, but they did not get the rights for it, and it was destroyed. And a year later, we would have a little film that changed just enough to try and slide under. Nosferatu came out. But you saw, the plot is exactly the same, right? Now, the Stoker family did fight, and they did win, and it was supposed to be destroyed. But here's the problem. Who's seen it? Right. Because that decision did not apply to the United States. So anything that had already made it over here, it didn't matter. It was too late. Now, vampire fans know that a lot of these copies survived, and now, as sexy as the novels Dracula and Carmilla were, I don't really give this film credit for how sexy vampires became. Do you know what I think it was? Who has seen this version? Yeah. Who has seen the Spanish version? Different, right? Different. So they would film the American one in the morning, the Spanish one at night. The Spanish one really upped the sexy. They believed that American fans couldn't handle it. So they tamed it down for us. But go watch the Spanish version. Suddenly, this comes out, it's a giant hit. Suddenly, people aren't scared that vampires will climb through the windows at night. People are opening their sashes, undoing their nightgowns, like just hoping this is going to happen. And Bella's just the beginning of Hot Draculas, right? Just the beginning. Really quickly, shout out your favorite Dracula.
He was cute and furry.
I can safely say that is the first time I've heard that answer in a panel. So I heard Hammer's version, Christopher Lee, very sexy, right? Gary Oldman, oh my goodness.
Jonathan Rhys Davies one.
Which one?
The Jonathan Rhys Davies.
Jonathan Rhys Davies, yeah, the 2010 TV series. Yes. Yeah, totally. I remember when Gary Oldman's version came out, I was 13, and it made me feel some confusion. Go ahead.
I was going to say, how about Dracula? He was good.
Oh, okay. We're talking about sexy Draculas. The one that I'll always stand by is, even though I know it's not the greatest movie, but Gerard Butler in Dracula 2000.
Really?
Anyhow, all right. In the last 124 years, this book has been adapted 30 times. Many actors have played the role. Just recently, we got to see Nicolas Cage play Dracula, which I walked into that movie thinking this is going to be terrible, and I was like, this is incredible. Right? But Dracula's not the only reason we have sexy vampires. In 1976, Anne Rice continued to change vampires with her books. And this introduced the idea of sexual fluidity in vampires. Now, not in the books, but when the version came out with Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, that was the first time where you really had the idea of like vampires being the epitome of sexual freedom, you know? It was the idea that nothing really, they didn't worry about anything. Do you know what I mean? And it made it so enticing. And then the 80s and 90s, it just kept ramping it up. So we have Gary Oldman's Dracula. John Blaylock in The Hunger. Yeah. David Michael. Jerry Dandridge. The first adaptation of Louis Armand and Lestat. And really important was our first sexy female vampires. Right? And that stays very strong, even to today, the idea of a female vampire. But it wasn't just the movies. You got to turn on your TV now, and you got to see vampires, right? Buffy the Vampire Slayer, ruled the airwaves. Spurned an Angel spin-off. We also got Forever Night, if anyone's seen that one. Right. Kindred the Embraced. Amazing. And we just wanted more, right? So in the 2000s, we got Vampires that Sparkle, Vampire Warriors, Vampire Brothers, we got the Queen of the Damned, and Southern Vampires. And we got so many remakes and reimaginings that it's hard to even put your head around it. And today, vampires are all over our country. It is very hard to find somebody who does not know what a vampire is. You have vampire bands, vampire cereals, vampire TV shows, kids shows, wine, stores, restaurants. It's hard to meet anyone 5 or younger that does not know what a vampire is. Now, here's the question. Are they real? This is where everybody gets real quiet. Here's what I will tell you. So, I used to end my panel giving you my opinion. I'm not going to do that anymore. I am going to leave it up to you guys, but this is what I'll tell you. In 2015, a survey conducted by the Atlanta Vampire Alliance found that at least 5,000 people in the U.S. identify as a vampire, and they are found on 6 out of 7 continents. Are they lifestylers? Are they cosplaying? Are they living out a fantasy? Or is it possible that creatures that have been whispered about since a time where there was no way for information to travel from town to town and country to country, is it possible that these stories are based on fact? I have my opinion. I'm not going to share it because it always turned into a massive debate and then nobody was having fun. But I want you guys to decide, and whatever you decide is okay. Nobody is here to take magic away from you. Nobody is here to tell you you're not allowed to believe what you want to believe, okay? You guys get to be whoever you want to be, as long as you're not hurting other people, and that is okay with me. So I want to thank you guys for joining my panel. I'm sorry I rushed through it, but I want us to have time to converse before we get kicked out of here. But thank you so much. And anybody who laughed at my perm picture has to follow me on YouTube. And I'm going to put it right there. But thank you guys so much for joining me. This is one of my favorite things about coming here is doing these panels. I always get really nervous ahead of time, and I don't know why. Because I always have such a good crowd, I always have such a good time, and you guys are awesome, and I'm here. We have 10 minutes to ask questions if anyone has any questions or comments, and then if you want, you can follow me back to my table, but we have like 15 minutes before they're going to kick us out. Go ahead.
A friend of mine, he hates Anne Rice because she destroyed vampires. She turned them into people. And
Yeah.
And
I hear this
love
a lot.
vampires.
Can I tell you what makes me livid? I have been a nurse 15 years. It's really hard to get me riled up. But I hate when someone looks at me and says, I don't like the new Interview with Vampire. They made them gay. They were gay in the book. They were gay in 1992. You chose not to see it.
When you said that some of the vampires that were found were royalty, was that like assassination based, or was that like people also in that royal family?
I don't know their lineage. I just know from the cloth that was on their body, they would have had to have been very wealthy or royal. Yeah.
How do you feel about the Munsters?
The Munsters? That is on my list to cover on my podcast. I haven't watched it in so long, but I do want to go back and rewatch it because I remember watching it as I grew up and really loving it. Go ahead.
You said you saw Sinners. Or you have
Yes.
seen Sinners?
Oh, yes.
How do you feel about the vampires?
I'm not going to spoil it. Here's what I'll tell you. First off, I didn't know it was going to be vampires. I thought it was going to be demons. So I thought it was going to be like an Evil Dead situation. So I was actually on vacation when it came out, and my DMs exploded. And I was like, I didn't know. So I rushed out. Here's what I'll say about Sinners. The thing about films like that is you have to know your vampires inside and out. And they knew their vampires. They were solid. And because of that, the movie held up so well. And I really enjoyed it, especially some of the older beliefs. If you guys want to come see the Vampire Hunting Kit, it's up here. Go ahead. Yeah.
How do you like Castlevania?
You know what? I'm actually watching it right now. Are you talking about the TV series on Netflix? I'm watching it right now to review on the podcast. So follow my YouTube channel and you'll get to hear my thoughts. Yeah. Go ahead.
So that's it. I was just like, how do you feel about it so far?
I'm really enjoying it. I don't know why I waited so long.
Super good.
Yeah.
How common of a fear was it that vampires were real and people were having these kids? I know you said you have to be castration.
I think it was very common. I think it was very common. I think just the idea that somebody can slip into your house and take your life is a very common fear. But then if you add like the supernatural aspect, but I also think it was a way to sort of control people and keep them in their house and, you know, virgins and all that stuff. Yeah. Go ahead.
Do you think vampires get enough nutrients from blood alone, or do they need other elements?
I think if they are vampires, then that is all they need. So the body is the thing I'll tell you as someone who has a doctorate in science is, your body is extremely adaptable. So if they have whatever creates them to be vampires, then that is all they need. Go ahead.
Yeah, how do you feel you watch Supernatural?
I love Supernatural. I've seen it 4 times. Don't get me started. I'm such a nerd about Supernatural. I don't like that they have all things. That I don't like, but I love the idea that they like mate for life and all that. I love that. Go ahead.
Do you ever look into alternative concepts of vampires, like in some anime, they got things like vampires,
Yeah, that's the thing, right? So that's what my YouTube channel is about, is every universe has its own rules, has its own vampires, and so that's what we talk about on the podcast, is the thing about vampires is you are allowed to do whatever you want with them, right? Even if you make them glitter and not have fangs or whatever, I hate that, but you're allowed to do whatever you want, right? It's free reign. That being said, I'm going to tell you what I think about it. Go ahead.
I know that you mentioned seminal pieces of enduring literature and media, like obviously Graham Stoker's, but obviously a lot of them are either based out of Central/Western Europe or
Yes.
the United States. Are there any seminal overarching vampire stories from other regions like China or India or something like that?
That's a good question. There would have to be. There would have to be a lot of very famous vampire novels in each country that maybe I'm just not well versed in. I mean, there would have to be. Creative writing has been around since the dawn of time. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you enjoy the new Nosferatu, and why you think the fandom is so divided on it?
That's a good question.
I enjoyed it personally.
I enjoyed it for what it was. I think that they wanted to take vampires back, all the way back. So to me, Nosferatu is like going to a classic art museum. You're either going to appreciate that art or it's not for you. Whereas like Sinners is like going to, the Natural History Museum at Smithsonian. It's a little more fun, it's a little more tangible. I did like what they did with it. It was classic Gothic, but it was very slow paced, and I see why people struggled with it. Yeah, go ahead.
Are there the same theories and superstitions from the Native American?
Yes. They're not called vampires, so that's the interesting thing, is every culture has this idea of a corpse that can come back and feed off humans. Right, but they have their own names, correct? Yeah, it's like Wendigo versus werewolf versus, they all have these same central ideas and these same stories. And what I think is so interesting is they go back to a time where there was no way to pass messages between countries. And so I'm like, so then where are all of this coming from and why they're all so similar? Go ahead. I think that's an interesting question. I think the idea of transformation, the idea of something that has been around for such a long time, and I think that's why vampires and witches and werewolves and fairies do have some overlapping. But like you said, Hollywood, I love the idea. One of my favorite tropes is like vampire versus werewolf, where there's like a rivalry. I always love that. But I think that's where it comes from. Go ahead. Yeah?
What do you think about, as a nurse, the connection between like ancient diseases and vampirism?
Yeah, you're talking about like porphyria.
Like the pale skin.
Yeah, porphyria, tuberculosis was another one. Like the one that happened here in the United States in the early 1900s up in the Northern Territories, that was more than likely tuberculosis. But if you think about it, they're coughing out blood. So to somebody who's ignorant, that looks like they ingested blood and then they're coughing it out. They become very pale, very wan. It looks like they can't go out in the sunlight. Meanwhile, the funny thing is, one of the best things for tuberculosis is the sunlight. So that was one of the best things. But I do think there is a lot of that. Yeah. Go ahead.
Do you have any recommendations for any more lesser known vampire media or film or TV? Any favorites that you might recommend for them?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many that I appreciate. And a lot like the Anita Blake series, I think is so much fun. I think after book 6, she kind of falls off the wagon, but the first 6 to 9 are very solid. I really enjoyed that one. The idea of like vampires and supernatural creatures being out and everybody knows about them, so now they need their own laws, their own police force, their own everything, I think is so interesting. And it's such a good way to tackle things like prejudice and racism without outright saying it. So like you see in True Blood, like anti-vampire groups, anti-vampire laws. It's such a great way to talk about how minorities are treated without putting it in your face. I really enjoy that. But yeah, you know what, follow my YouTube channel. You hear me talk about a lot of really obscure things that I really enjoy. Go ahead.
I don't know if you're interested in speculative evolution. I saw a couple videos on how vampirism might have been like a disease. It went extinct before we could document it.
Yeah. I think genetic anomalies are so common that it would be not a shock to me to find out that there's a genetic anomaly that's happened over time that has created kind of like a vampiric human being. Yes, that being said, I would know why they keep quiet, because I probably would too. But every time I do this panel, I hope that a vampire is going to find me afterwards and turn me. Go ahead. I love Queen of the Damned. One of my characters in my book is based on Lestat from Queen of the Damned. Like the leather pants, I'm telling you, I came into my sexual awakening in the 90s when you read my books, because it's very much like leather pants, long hair, rock star. Yes, I love it. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you to my fellow Queen of the Damned lovers, because everyone gets so mad at me for it. I love it.
Dracula 2000, I will stand by for the rest of it, even though I know it's not that great. Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman, I know it's not that great, but I freaking love it. Queen of the Damned, like I'm unapologetic. There's just some things that just for whatever reason, they touched my heart at the right time, and I will fight somebody.
My actual question though is, why do you think we keep like going back to vampires? Because we're in like this renaissance right now.
The idea of being free from worry of poverty, free from worry of disease, free from worry of aging, free from worry of what will people think if I date a girl? What will people think if I date boys and girls? And like vampires don't care about that stuff. So vampires represent a freedom from giving a shit. And I think that's so powerful for people. Yeah. Go ahead.
Have you seen Carmilla web series and or First Kill?
I've seen First Kill, not Carmilla the web series. I'll have to check it out.
It's on YouTube.
More people need to talk about Carmilla. Like, that book really got lost because of Dracula. That stinks.
Where do you kind of take the edges of the term vampire?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like determine if a cop be a vampire? Or, like, is it just blood? Or is there...
So I talk about this on my podcast all the time, because I'm always like, to me, so let's talk about Discovery of Witches, okay? You can be in the sun, you don't have fangs, you're not a vampire. What? You're not, you're something else, right? You're something else. So to me it is, you have fangs, you are human-like in appearance, and you feed off blood, and you can't be in the sunlight. That is a vampire. There are other types of vampiric beings, but to me that's a vampire. So when they start to wander away from that, to me it starts to feel like a different type of creature. Make sense? I know, I'm OG with my vampires. But again, you can do whatever you want. Write whatever vampire you want. I'll review it on my podcast, but don't be mad when I tell you what I like and don't like. All right, guys, the con is done in 10 minutes. So I'm going to head back to my table in case you guys